सर्वमङ्गलमङ्गल्यं वरेण्यं वरदं शुभं नारायणं नमस्कृत्य सर्वकर्माणि कारयेत्। ॐ तद्विष्णुः परमं पदं सरापश्यन्ति सूरयद्दिवीव चक्षुराततम्। ॐ अपवित्रपवित्रो वा सर्वावस्थाङ्गतोऽपि वा यस्मरेत् पुण्डरीकाक्षं स बाह्याभ्यन्तरशुचिः। ॐ श्रीरामकृष्णदेवस्य पार्षदभक्ताश्रितजनहृदयेषु नित्यलीलाभावविकाशनाय निखिलजनगणमध्ये तन्माहात्म्ययशो वृद्धये तत्प्रीतये च भक्तिज्ञानोदयाय अयमारम्भशुभाय भवतु। ॐ ह्रीं ऐटिकन् पुष्पे आधारशक्त्यादिभ्यो नमः। अस्त्राय पट्। नमः 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 नमः। क्रों गंगे च यमुने चैव गोदावरी सरस्वती नर्मदे सिन्धु कावेरी जलेऽस्मिन् सन्निधिं कुरु। क्रों गंगे च यमुने चैव गोदावरी सरस्वती नर्मदे सिन्धु कावेरी जलेऽस्मिन् सन्निधिं कुरु। Vartivitabhyo Namaha. Om Etikan Pushpe Dwara Devatabhyo Namaha. Om Etikan Pushpe Brahmane Namaha. Om Etikan Pushpe Vastu Purushaya Namaha. Om Sarva Vignanuchari Om Tat Swaha Om Apasatantu Te Bhuta Ye Bhuta Bhuta Samsita Ye Bhuta Vigna Karatara
করুণা পাথার জননী আমার এলে মা করুণা করিতে করুণা পাথার জননী আমার এলে মা করুণা করিতে তাপিতে তরে নরদেহ ধরে তাপিতে তরে নরদেহ ধরে অশেষ যাতনা সইতে করুণা পাথার জননী আমার এলে মা করুণা করিতে ত্রিদিব ত্যাজিয়া ত্রিদিব ত্যাজিয়া এ ধরায় আশা সন্তান তরে কত কাঁদা হাসা ত্রিদিব ত্যাজিয়া এ ধরায় আশা সন্তান তরে তবু কাঁদা হাসা অহেতুক তবু এই ভালোবাসা পারি কি গো মোরা বুঝিতে করুণা পাথার জননী আমার এলে মা করুণা করিতে শত জনমে যত পাপাই নিতে ছোটনিয়া ওই রাঙা পাই শত জনমে যত পাপাই নিতে ছোটনিয়া ওই রাঙা পাই সকলে তো তুমি সহিলে হেলায় ফুল দিতে কত তাপিতে করুণা পাথার জননী আমার এলে মা করুণা করিতে ভক্তি বিহীন হৃদয় আমার কেমনে বুঝিব শ্রীপাদ তোমার ভক্তি বিহীন হৃদয় আমার কেমনে বুঝিব শ্রীপাদ তোমার নয়ন ভরিয়া দাও প্রেমাধার নয়ন ভরিয়া পদপঙ্কজধুয়তে করুণা পাথার জননী আমার এলে মা করুণা করিতে কাঁপিতে তরে নরদেহ ধরে কাঁপিতে তরে নরদেহ ধরে অশেষ যাতনা সহিতে করুণা পাথার জননী আমার এলে মা করুণা করিতে
Om Am Hrim Krom Yam Ram Lam Bam Sam Sham Sam Hom Hom Sa Shri Ramakrishna Devataya Praniha Pranaha Om Am Hrim Krom Yam Ram Lam Bam Sam Sham Sam Hom Hom Sa Shri Ramakrishna Devataya Jivaiha Stitaha Om Am Hrim Krom Yam Ram Lam Bam Sam Sham Sam Hom Hom Sa Shri Ramakrishna Devataya Sarvendriyani Om Am Hrim Krom Yam Ram Dam Bam Sam Sham Sam Hom Hom Sa Shri Ramakrishna Devataya Vang Manas Chakshutva Shrotra Grana Prana Hiha Gatya Sukham Chiram Tishtantu Swaha Om Asya Matrika Mantrasya Meraprishtarish Om Asya Matrika Mantrasya Brahma Rishir Gayatri Chando Devi Saraswati Devata Halo Bijani Swara Shakti Avyaktam Kilakam Sarvabhishta Siddhye Lipinyase Viniyogaha Kam Angushtabhyam Namahim Cham 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 Yam Yamim Tarjanibhyam Swaha Om Tam 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 Nam No Madhimabhyam Vashat Aim Tam 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 Nam Namayam Namikabhyam Om Om Pam 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 Om Kinishtabhyam Oshat Amyam Ram Dam Bam Sam Sam Ham Ksham Karatar Prishtabhyam Saipat Am Kam Am Hridayaya Namaha Im Cham 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 Jam Jam Yamim Shirase Swaha Om Tam 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 Nam Nam Om Shikaye Vashat Aim Tam 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 Nam Namayam Kavachaya Hum Om Pam 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 Om Natataraya Voshat Amyam Ram Nam Bam Sam Sam Ham Ksham Karatal Prishtabhyam Stayapat Om Brahmane Rishiye Namaha Om Gayatri Chanse Namaha Om Matrika Saraswati Devataye Namaha Om Halbhyo Bijaypyo Namaha Om Swaribhyo Shaktibhyo Namaha Om Avyakta Kilakaya Namaha Om Etebhyo Gandadibhyo Namaha Om Etebhyo Gandadibhyo Namaha Om Etebhyo Gandadibhyo Namaha Om Etikan Pushpe Etebhyo Gandadibhyo Namaha Om Etikan Pushpe Etaratipatiye Devaya Vishnave Namaha Om Etikan Pushpe Etat Sambradhanebhyo Pujaniya Devebhyo Namaha Om Namo Vivasvate Brahman Bhasvate Vishnu Tejase Jagat Savitre Shuchaye Savitre Karmadayine Eshwarghya Om Shri Suryaya Namaha Om Java Kusuma Sankasham Kashyapeyam Mohadyutim Dhvantarim Sarvapapagnam Pranatosmi Divakaram Om Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gagana Sadrisham Tattvamasyadilaksham Ekam Nityam Vimalachalam Sarvadhi Sakshibhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tannamami Sadgurum Tannamami. Om Meshaganda Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Metiganda Pushpe Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Meshaganda Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Meshadipa Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Idam Supakarna Naivedyam Shri Gurave Nivedayami. Om Karvam Stulatananum Gajendra Lambodaram Sundaram Prasyandan Madagandhalubdha Madhupa Vyalola Gandastalam Dantadhata Vigadharitari Rudhirai Sindhura Shobhakaram Vande Shaila Sutasutam Ganapatim Siddhipradam Kamadam. Gam Heshaganda Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Gam Idam Sachanana Pushpam Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Gam Eshadhupa Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Gam Eshadipa Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Gam Idam Supakarana Naivedyam Shri Ganeshaya Nivedayami. Om Etikan Vishpe Shivari Panchadevatabhyo Namaha. Om Etikan Vishpe Matsyari Dashavataribhyo Namaha. Om Hri Etikan Vishpe Kalyari Dashamahavidyabhyo Namaha. Om Etikan Vishpe Sarvebhyo Devibhyo Namaha. Om Hri Etikan Vishpe Sarvabhyo Devibhyo Namaha. Om Aim Sarvadevi Devi Swarupaya Sri Ramakrishnaya Namaha Ityasya Mantrasya Brahma Rishir Gayatri Chanda Sarvadevi Devi Swarupa Sri Ramakrishna Devata Rishyali Nyase Viniyogaha Om Brahmane Rishiye Namaha Om Gayatri Chandase Namaha Om Aim Sarvadevi Devi Swarupaya Sri Ramakrishnaya Namaha Oim Angustabhyam Namah Ram Dhariribhyam Swaha Mamadimabhyam Vashat Krim Anamikabhyam Hum Shnam Kanishtabhyam Boshat Oim Ramakrishna Katadrapistabhyam Swaipat Oim Hridayai Namaha Ram Shirase Swaha Mam Shikaye Vashat Krim Kavachai Hum Shnam Nattatarayaya Boshat Oim Ramakrishna Katadrapistabhyam Swaipat Om Ayam Sarve Devi Devi Surupaya Shri Ramakrishna Nama Om Ayam Sarve Devi Devi Surupaya Shri Ramakrishna Nama Om Ayam Sarve Devi Devi Surupaya Shri Ramakrishna Nama Om. Just 1 minute. Om Hridaya Kamala Madhye Rajidam Nirvikalpam Sarasara Bhedatitam Ekaswarupam Prakriti Vikriti Shunyam Nityamanandamurtim Vimala Paramahamsam Ramakrishnam Bhajamaha Nirupamamati Sukshmam Nishprapancham Niriham Gagana Sadrishamisham Sarvabhutadhibhasam Trigunarahita Satchit Brahmarupam Varenyam Vimala Paramahamsam Ramakrishnam Bhajamaha Vitaritumavatirnam Jnana Bhakti Prashanti Pranaya Galita Chittam Jiva Dukha Sahishnum Dhrisa Sahja Samadhim Chinmayam Komalangam Vimala Paramahamsam Ramakrishnam Bhajamaha.
আপনি করিলে আপনার পূজা আপনার স্তুতিগান ভবতারিণী পূজারি ঠাকুর তুমি হে আমার প্রাণ আপনি করিলে আপনার পূজা আপনার স্তুতিগান ভবতারিণী পূজারি ঠাকুর তুমি হে আমার প্রাণ আপনি করিলে আপনার পূজা আপনার স্তুতিগান কেহ বলে তুমি সাধক প্রধান কেহ দেয় তোমা দেবতারি মান কেহ বলে তুমি সাধক প্রধান কেহ দেয় তোমা দেবতারি মান গৌরব সব ত্যাজিয়ে দিয়েছি হৃদয়ে আসন দান আপনি করিলে আপনার পূজা আপনার স্তুতিগান যাবে মনে পড়ে করুণার ছবি পর দুঃখে মৃয়মান পর পাপ বহি রোগ জ্বালা সহিত পিতে করিলে ত্রাণ দেবকী মানব পরিচয়ে আজ হেন প্রেমিক আতুল চরণে করিতে জীবন দান। আপনি করিলে আপনার পূজা, আপনার স্তুতি গান। ভবতারিণী পূজারি ঠাকুর তুমি হে আমার প্রাণ। আপনি করিলে আপনার পূজা, আপনার স্তুতি গান।
Om Amritapitanamasi Swaha. Om Aim Idam Panarthodakam Sarvadevi Devi Surupaya Sri Ramakrishnaya Nivediyami. Om Aim Idam Hachamani Yodakam Sarvadevi Devi Surupaya Sri Ramakrishnaya Namaha. Ram Angustabhyam Namaha Hrim Dharinibhyam Swaha Hrum Matimabhyam Vashat Hraim Namikabhyam Hum Hraum Kanishtabhyam Oshat Harakaratrapishtabhyam Saipat Ram Hridaya Namaha Hrim Shirisai Swaha Hrum Shikaye Vashat Hraim Kavachaya Hum Hraum Natatraya Oshat Harakaratrapishtabhyam Saipat Om Aim Hrim Sarvadevi Devi Surupinyai Sri Sarada Devyai Namaha. Om Aim Hrim Sarvadevi Devi Surupinyai Sri Sarada Devyai Namaha. Om Aim Hrim Sarvadevi Devi Surupinyai Sri Sarada Devyai Namaha. Om. Okay, Maya Rekta. Maya.
বিশ্বজননী সে যে ভিখারিণী, জগতে তারিতে এলে মায়াবার। বিশ্বজননী সে যে ভিখারিণী, জগতে তারিতে এলে মায়াবার। আত্মা শকতি দৈন্য মূরতি, আত্মা শকতি দৈন্য মূরতি, হারিয়েছি নিবে হেন সাধ্যকার। বিশ্বজননী সে যে ভিখারিণী, জগতে তারিতে এলে মায়াবার। করুণায় গড়া চিন্ময়ী তনু পদ রাখে বরে শত শশী ভানু। করুণায় গড়া চিন্ময়ী তনু পদ রাখে বরে শত শশী ভানু। আখি পঙ্কজে সতত বিরাজে মুনি মনোলোভা স্নেহের পাথার। বিশ্বজননী সেজে ভিখারিণী জগতে তারিতে এলে মায়াবার। ভকতি তরে দেহে মনে রাখা দিবানিশিতায় শত কাজে তাহাকা। নাহি কবিরাম ভাব অবিরাম, নাহি কবিরাম ভাব অবিরাম। কেমনি করিবে তাপিতে উদ্ধার। এত যদি মাগো করুণা এবার, এদিন সন্তানে কাঁদায় নায়ার। এত যদি মাগো করুণা এবার, এদিন সন্তানে কাঁদায় নায়ার। খুলে দাও দ্বার ভব কারাগার, খুলে দাও দ্বার ভব কারাগার। মিশে যাক প্রাণ শ্রীপদে তোমার। বিশ্বজননী সেজে ভিখারিণী জগতে তারিতে এলে মায়াবার। বিশ্বজননী সেজে ভিখারিণী জগতে তারিতে এলে মায়াবার।
Om Aim Hrim Aisa Rupa Sarvadevri Devi Surupinye Shri Sarada Devi Namaha. Om Aim Hrim Aisa Rupa Sarvadevri Devi Surupinye Shri Sarada Devi Namaha. Om Vamichismai Supakaravidyaya Namaha, Vamichismai Supakaravidyaya Namaha, Vamichismai Supakaravidyaya Namaha. Pat Yam Ram Ram. Om Aim Hrim Idam Sopakarana Naivedyam Sarvadevi Devi Surupinyai Sri Sarada Devyai Namaha. Om Yam Ram Om Aim Hrim Idam Sopakarana Naivedyam Sarvadevi Devi Surupinyai Sri Sarada Devyai Nivedayami. Om Amrita Topastarnamasi Swaha. Om Pranaya Swaha. Om Apanaya Swaha. Om Vyanaya Swaha. Om Udanaya Swaha. Om Samanaya Swaha.
মা এসেছে মোদের কি আর ভাবনা ভাই, মা এসেছে মোদের কি আর ভাবনা ভাই, ভাবের বোঝা দূরে ফেলে আয় সকলে নাচি গায়, ভাবের বোঝা দূরে ফেলে আয় সকলে নাচি গায়, মা এসেছে মোদের কি আর ভাবনা ভাই, মা এসেছে মোদের কি আর ভাবনা ভাই, ভাবের বোঝা দূরে ফেলে আয় সকলে নাচি গায়, ভাবের বোঝা দূরে ফেলে আয় সকলে নাচি গায়, মা এসেছে মোদের কি আর ভাবনা ভাই। মাঝে জগৎ তারিণী ভব ভয় হারিণী, মাঝে জগৎ তারিণী ভব ভয় হারিণী, ধর্ম অর্থ কাম মোক্ষ সর্বদায়িনী, মাঝে জগৎ তারিণী ভব ভয় হারিণী, ধর্ম অর্থ কাম মোক্ষ সর্বদায়িনী, আবার না চাহিতে সকল দিয়ে সন্তানেরও মন ভোলায়, না চাহিতে সকল দিয়ে সন্তানেরও মন ভোলায়, মা এসেছে মোদের কি আর ভাবনা ভাই, মা এসেছে মোদের কি আর ভাবনা ভাই। ওরে কে আছিস কোথায়, ওরে আয় রে ছুটে আয়, ওরে কে আছিস কোথায়, সবে আয় রে ছুটে আয়, এমন সুদিন পেরে ভাই হারা স্নেহায়, ওরে কে আছিস কোথায়, সবে আয় রে ছুটে আয়, এমন সুদিন পেরে ভাই হারা স্নেহায়, শুধু জয় মা বলে দাঁড়া রে তুই, দেখবি দুঃখের নামটি নাই, জয় মা বলে দাঁড়া রে তুই, দেখবি দুঃখের নামটি নাই, মা এসেছে মোদের কি আর ভাবনা ভাই, মা এসেছে মোদের কি আর ভাবনা ভাই, ভবের বোঝা দূরে ফেলে আয় সকলে নাচে গায়, ভবের বোঝা দূরে ফেলে আয় সকলে নাচে গায়, মা এসেছে মোদের কি আর ভাবনা ভাই, মা এসেছে মোদের কি আর ভাবনা ভাই।
Om Stapakaya Dharmasya Sarvadharma Swarupine Avatara Varishthaya Ramakrishnaya Te Namaha. Om Yathagnirdahika Shakti Ramakrishne Sthita Hiya Sarva Vidya Swarupam Tam Sharadam Pranamamyaham. Om Paratatve Sadalino Ramakrishna Samagnyaya Yodharma Sthapanarato Viresham Tam Namamyaham. Om Kalindi Pullakamale Madhavena Kridarata Brahmanandam Namastubhyam Sadguru Lokanayakaha. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Bharapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. Thakur direct. Yes, let me get that up. And can you give this to put it in the room there? You can put it in there. That's good. That's good.
অযুত কণ্ঠে বন্দনা গীতে ভুবন ভরিয়ায় উঠেছে তব অমিয় বারুতা, দেশ দেশান্তরে হৃদয়ে হৃদয়ে পশিছে। অযুত কণ্ঠে বন্দনা গীতে ভুবন ভরিয়ায় উঠেছে তব অমিয় বারুতা, দেশ দেশান্তরে হৃদয়ে হৃদয়ে পশিছে। অযুত কণ্ঠে বন্দনা গীতে ভুবন ভরিয়ায় উঠেছে। বঙ্গ হৃদয় সরশিশুলিরে চারু শত দল ফুটিছে, বিশ্ব মানব বিস্ময়ে হেরি, বিশ্ব মানব বিস্ময়ে হেরি, রূপসুরভে বাতিছে তব অমিয় বারুতা, দেশ দেশান্তরে হৃদয়ে হৃদয়ে বসিছে অযুত কণ্ঠে বন্দনা গীতে ভুবন ভরিয়া উঠিছে প্রেমের ভূপতি পতাকা তোমার বিজয় গৌরবে ভাতিছে ভেদ বিবাদের চির অবসান হেন আশা মনে জাগিছে ক্ষীণ কণ্ঠ তুলি হীন এ বিনয় রাম কৃষ্ণ নাম গাহিছে হীন কণ্ঠ তুলি হীন এ বিনয় রাম কৃষ্ণ নাম গাহিছে প্রেম রাজ্যে তব দিও তারে স্থান প্রেম রাজ্যে তব দিও তারে স্থান হেন চিরদাস মাগিছে তব অমিয় বারতা দেশ দেশান্তরে হৃদয়ে হৃদয়ে বসিছে অযুত কণ্ঠে বন্দনা গীতে ভুবন ভরিয়া উঠিছে তব অমিয় বারতা দেশ দেশান্তরে হৃদয়ে হৃদয়ে বসিছে অযুত কণ্ঠে বন্দনা গীতে ভুবন ভরিয়া উঠিছে
Welcome to our Vedanta Society of Greater Houston and our celebration of three things today. First is Kalpataru Day, the day of Sri Ramakrishna's self-manifestation of his divinity. And then we are celebrating Holy Mother's birth anniversary, which this year falls on January 5th. But because we want to do it on a day when people are free and able to participate, we are doing it on January 1st, as some of our other centers in the West do. And then the third, of course, it is the New Year. And the New Year always is a time of celebration, a time for putting aside the old and looking to the new, making amends and learning from the old, but turning our sight toward the new, the fresh. And so we are celebrating New Year's Day, Holy Mother's birth anniversary, and Kalpataru Day. And so in celebration of the Kalpataru Day, I want to first say a few words and then read from the story of Sri Ramakrishna's life about the occasion. In the life of every incarnation of God, there has to come some point at which more than one or two people, but at least a group of disciples, learn that their teacher is not just an ordinary teacher, when the teacher manifests their divinity. And so in the life of Sri Krishna, we find that there are several incidents that where that divinity is manifested. In fact, it seems to be manifested from the time of his birth and during his childhood as well, several times. Of course, we don't know the historicity of the actual incidents, but all of those incidents are telling the one thing, and that is that God manifested in human form is manifesting his divine nature through that human form For instance, just to take one example, when Sri Krishna's adoptive mother, Yashoda, sees that he's been eating dirt, as children sometimes do. That's common in the East or West, whether it's India or America or wherever. Children experience things through their mouth. And so the small children will often put dirt in their mouth. So Yashoda sees Sri Krishna putting dirt in his mouth. And she says, "My child, what are you doing?" And he pretends that he didn't do anything. And she said, "No, open your mouth. Let me see what you put in your mouth." Then he opens his mouth, and she sees the whole universe within his mouth. When he opens his mouth, she sees that within his mouth is the whole universe. And there in a distant speck of dust within that vast universe called the earth, there's a small corner of that speck of dust where she is looking at her child Krishna. And so thus Krishna revealed his divine nature to his mother. And of course, there's the incident. I said I'd mention one incident, but let me mention a second. The famous incident, the most famous incident in the Bhagavad Gita, the 11th chapter, the Vishwarupa Darshana, where Sri Krishna reveals his divine nature to Arjuna. And Arjuna at first is awestruck, and then he is fear-struck. He's terrified by what he sees of the vastness and the dynamic, the infinite dynamism of the divine being, and pleads with him to come back to his human form, which he does. And so in the life of Jesus as well, you find that there's what is called the transfiguration. That's a very important moment in the life of Jesus, which is especially observed in the Roman Catholic tradition, the Eastern Orthodox tradition, the Anglican tradition, that is Episcopalian tradition. And that is when Jesus revealed his divinity to his disciples. So let me read from the Bible. It's told in 3 of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the 3 synoptic Gospels, the 3 Gospels which focus on the storyline of Jesus' life. And it also seems to be mentioned in the Gospel of St. John, in principle, if not through story. And so according to Matthew, it says, "And after 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John his brother, and brought them up into a high mountain part, and was transfigured before them, and his face shone as the sun, and his raiment, his clothing, was white as the light. And behold, there appeared unto them Moses and Elias, talking with him. Then answered Peter and said unto Jesus, Lord, it is good for us to be here. If thou wilt, let us make here 3 tabernacles, one for thee, and one for Moses, and one for Elias." I stumbled on that name because it's often said Elias, and either pronunciation is correct. "While he yet spake, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and behold, a voice out of the cloud which said, This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Hear him." And so here God himself speaks from the heavens and said, "This is my Son, in whom I am well pleased," and tells the disciples, "Hear him." And when the disciples heard it, they fell on their face and were terribly afraid. And Jesus came and touched them and said, "Arise and be not afraid." And when they had lifted up their eyes, they saw no one save Jesus only. That is, Moses and Elias had both disappeared. And as they came down from the mountain, Jesus charged them, saying, "Tell the vision to no man, until the Son of Man be risen again from the dead." That is, until after his crucifixion and resurrection. This is the story of Jesus' transfiguration, when he revealed himself, when his face and even his clothing shone, his face shone like the sun, and his clothing shone with a bright light. And then the voice of God said, "This is my Son, in whom I'm well pleased. Hear him." So again, the transfiguration, meaning when Jesus revealed his divine nature. Otherwise, how do you know an incarnation from an ordinary saint, if you can call any saint ordinary, an ordinary realized soul, if there is such a thing? That is, a jiva like you or me, who attains to liberation, attains to a high state of freedom and enlightenment, spiritual freedom and enlightenment. How do you tell the difference between such a one and an incarnation of God? Of course, one way is through the influence of such a person. A great saint may bless a number of people in their lifetime, and after they pass away, if they're really great, like to take a Western example, a St. Francis of Assisi, then for generations and hundreds of years, people remember them and are inspired by their example. But an incarnation of God liberates many people in his lifetime. And after his passing, then people continue to attain liberation by meditating on him, something which doesn't happen directly through the agency of a great saint. You may be inspired by a great saint, you may meditate on them, and you may progress spiritually. But by meditating on and worshiping an incarnation of God, one experiences that the object of one's worship and prayer, the incarnation of God, is the direct and immediate means of my liberation. It's they that give me liberation even centuries after they have passed away. And so that's one way we know an incarnation, but the other way is through what the Christians call the transfiguration. And so that happened in the life of Sri Ramakrishna. As in the life of Sri Krishna, there were various times in Sri Ramakrishna's life where he revealed his identity, his spiritual identity, to one or two people. At various times in his life, including in his childhood. But it was on Kalpataru Day, January 1st, 1886, where he revealed it to a number of his disciples by bestowing on them spiritual illumination. Let me mention one other thing about the term Kalpataru Day. It's in the reading that I'm going to do in just a moment, but let me anticipate what Swami Sharadanandaji says, so that it makes so to add to the to emphasize the point. That is, Swami Sharadananda says that to call that occasion Kalpataru Day and to call Sri Ramakrishna the Kalpataru, which means the wish-fulfilling tree of Indian lore, is not correct, because the wish-fulfilling tree gives you whatever you wish for. If you're standing under the mythical wish-fulfilling tree, if you're standing under it, whatever you wish for, good or bad, you get it. You can ask for things that are morally wrong, things that are degenerate, things that are destructive to other people, and you get it because you're standing under the Kalpataru tree. It grants whatever wish comes into your mind. And of course, East and West, there are many fairy tales and stories, folk tales, about people who gained boons from some supernatural source and came to grief by their wishes. That is, it's not enough to have the power to have your wishes fulfilled. It's more important that you be wise so that you make the right choice, because a bad wish fulfilled is disaster for the person. And so Swami Saradananda says that the term Kalpataru was not appropriate for the occasion, but it was used before he said that, and it has continued to be used down to the present day. And so now we know it as Kalpataru Day. So all we need to do now is to reinterpret Kalpataru in terms of Sri Ramakrishna, that he was the spiritual Kalpataru, that is, the one who fulfills one's deepest longing, because the deepest longing of any person, in fact, the deepest longing of any living thing, the deepest longing of nature itself, is for the realization of unity with reality. Everything in the universe is striving to go back to its original state, which is perfection. This universe is a universe of lost balance, and everything and everyone is trying to go back to a state of perfect balance, which is a state of perfect harmony, which is a state of perfect union, which is a state of perfect blessedness. That's the state which somehow part of us has never forgotten. And it's that which drives us to do everything that we do. It's the great motivating force in life, that which causes us to do all of the things we do, good and bad, wise and stupid. Everything that we do is motivated by that. As Swami Vivekananda said, that's the planets themselves, the galaxies themselves are striving for that. The worm, the insect is striving for that. We're all striving to get back to that state which is our original state. And so Sri Ramakrishna is the Kalpataru in that sense, that he fulfills the deepest longing of the heart, a longing which in most people still sleeps. It's there, it's motivating them to do whatever they do, but they haven't awakened to what it's really seeking, what that longing within the heart of everyone is really longing for. And so Sri Ramakrishna is that Kalpataru who fulfills that deepest longing. So now let me come to the reading. Sri Ramakrishna had recently, when this happened, January 1st, 1886, he had recently moved to the Kashipur Garden House outside of Calcutta. And so he had already been suffering for several months from cancer of the throat. First, he had moved from Calcutta or from Dakshineshwar as the cancer got bad. He moved to Shampukur. And after 3 months in Shampukur, they moved him to a better place near the Ganges and a more solitary place where the air was better, to a garden house in Kashipur, North Calcutta. And so he had already been there for some days. And so it says, the reading begins from Swami Saradananda's Life of Sri Ramakrishna. On 1st January 1886, the master felt better and expressed a desire to walk in the garden for a short while. Because it was a holiday, the householder devotees began arriving at the Kashipur garden after midday, individually and in groups. The master came down from upstairs at 3 p.m. There were more than 30 people talking amongst themselves inside the house and sitting under the trees in the garden. They all stood up reverently and bowed down when they saw the master. The master went out through the western door of the hall, descended onto the garden path, and proceeded slowly southward toward the gate. The devotees followed him at a little distance. When he reached the midpoint of the path between the house and the gate, the master saw Girish, Ram, Atul, and a few others under a tree on the west side of the path. They bowed down to him and came to him joyfully. Before anyone had spoken a word, the master addressed Girish, asking him, "Girish, what have you seen and understood about me that makes you say all these things to everyone wherever you go?" So let me say a word of explanation here, interrupting the reading. The Girish was one of those, like Ramchandra Datta, who was also present. The two of them especially, a few others, but they were the loudest people announcing to one and all that Sri Ramakrishna was an incarnation of God, that he was not just a saintly man who had lived in Dakshineshwar and now moved to Kashipur, but that he was an incarnation of God, and that through him one could attain to enlightenment, full enlightenment, that his blessings were enough to carry one across the ocean of samsara. And so, again, Sri Ramakrishna had scolded Girish several times for saying that to people. And the reason for Sri Ramakrishna's scolding was that Sri Ramakrishna had said years before and told Holy Mother that when you see one and all worshiping this, meaning worshiping him as an incarnation, know that the end is near. Know that this won't last long. And so now Girish and Ram were telling one and all that Sri Ramakrishna was an incarnation, an avatara, a God-man who could grant liberation to anyone who came to him. And so again, Sri Ramakrishna asks him, "Girish, what have you seen and understood about this that makes you say all these things to everyone wherever you go?" Unperturbed, Girish knelt down at the master's feet, folded his hands before his raised face, and responded in a voice choked with emotion, "What more can I say of him? Even the sages Vyasa and Valmiki could find no words to measure his glory." Now, Vyasa, of course, wrote the story, at least according to legend, wrote the story of Sri Krishna in the Vishnu Purana and the Srimad Bhagavata Purana. So he revealed, and the Mahabharata. So he revealed the glory of Sri Krishna. And Valmiki was the author of the Ramayana, revealing the glory of Sri Ram. So again, Girish knelt down at the master's feet and folded his hands before his raised face and responded in a voice choked with emotion, "What more can I say of him? Even the sages Vyasa and Valmiki could find no words to measure his glory." Girish's sincere faith, expressed in those words, so moved the master that he said to the devotees while looking at Girish, "What more need I tell you? I bless you all. May you all be illumined." He became overwhelmed by love and compassion for his devotees and went into ecstasy after uttering those few words. That selfless and profound blessing touched the devotees deep within their hearts, and they became mad with joy. They forgot time and space. They forgot the master's illness. They forgot that they had vowed not to touch the master until his recovery. They saw that a wondrous divine being had come down to them from heaven and was calling to them affectionately. They also felt that their suffering grieved him, and that he was carrying in his heart an infinite pain and compassion for them, and offering them shelter as selflessly as a loving mother. They became anxious to bow down to him and take the dust of his feet. Their cries of "Jai Ramakrishna," victory to Ramakrishna, resounded in all directions as one by one they bowed down to him. And as they touched his feet, the ocean of the master's compassion burst through all bounds and created an astonishing phenomenon. Almost every day in Dakshineshwar, we had seen the master being overwhelmed with compassion and grace and blessed some devotees with his powerful divine touch. On this day, as he remained in a semi-ecstatic state, he began to touch each devotee present in a similar way, and their joy was boundless. The devotees understood that from this day on, the master could no longer conceal his divinity from them or from anyone else in the world. They had no doubt that from now on, all sinners and sufferers, despite their shortcomings, their lack of spirituality, and feelings of inadequacy, would find shelter at his blessed feet. Seeing the master in that unique and exalted state, some became speechless and could only watch him as if bewitched. Some called out loudly to everyone inside the house to come and be blessed by the master's grace. Others picked flowers from the garden and began to worship him, uttering mantras and showering him with flowers. When the master's ecstasy came to an end after some time, the devotees calmed down. The master finished his walk in the garden, then returned to the house and to his room. Ramchandra and some devotees have said that on that day the master became the Kalpataru, the wish-fulfilling tree. But we think it is more reasonable to describe this event as the manifestation of the master's fearless divine nature, or to say that he revealed himself on that day, granting fearlessness to all. It is said that the Kalpataru gives people whatever they ask for, good or bad. But the master did not do that. By this event, he let it be known clearly that he was a God-man, and he offered shelter from fear to all without discrimination. At any rate, Haran Chandra Das is worthy of being mentioned amongst those who were blessed by the master's grace that day. As soon as Haran bowed down to the master placed his foot on Haran's head. Seldom did the master bestow his grace in this way. Ramlal Chattopadhyay, a nephew of the master, was also present on that occasion and received his grace. When asked about his experience, Ramlal said, "Before this, when I meditated, I could see only part of my chosen deity with my mind's eye. When I saw his feet, I couldn't see his face. And when I saw his form, his face to his waist, I couldn't see his feet. Moreover, whatever I saw never seemed to be alive. But no sooner had the Master touched me that day than the whole form of my chosen deity appeared in my heart as a living presence, loving and effulgent." We interviewed several devotees who were present on that occasion about their experiences. We shall conclude this subject by recording what Vaikuntanath told us. Vaikuntha Sanyal met the Master about the same time that we did, that is 1883. We have recorded some stories in this book about how the Master gave him instructions and formed his spiritual life. The Master initiated Vaikuntha with a mantra and blessed him, and from then on he practiced sadhana and tried his utmost to have a vision of his chosen deity. He understood that he would not succeed without the Master's grace. So from time to time, he fervently prayed to the Master. That is, he asked the Master several times to grant him illumination, to grant him his grace so that he could feel the reality, experience the reality of God. But the Master had always told him that it will come in time. So Vaikuntha was present when the events of 1st January took place. After the Master had blessed 2 or 3 devotees with his powerful divine touch, Vaikuntha went before him, reverently bowed down to him and implored, "Sir, please bestow your grace on me." The Master answered, "You've achieved everything." Vaikuntha said, "Sir, when you say that I've achieved everything, it must be so. Kindly help me so that I can understand it a little." The Master said, "All right," and gently touched his chest for a moment. Vaikuntha described it thus: "Consequently, a wonderful change came across my mind. I began to see the Master's gracious, smiling, and luminous form in the sky, in the houses, the trees, all human beings, and in everything else I saw in all directions. I was overwhelmed with extreme bliss. At that time, I saw you both," that is Swami Saradananda and Swami Adbhutananda, "on the roof and called loudly to you, 'Oh, you all, wherever you are, come here right now.' That spiritual mood and vision continued for some days, even in the waking state. I was amazed and spellbound, seeing the Master in all things. This experience remained whether I went to the office or elsewhere on business. My work suffered because I couldn't concentrate on my duties. When I realized this, I tried unsuccessfully to stop the vision for a while. I now understood a little why Arjuna was afraid when he had the vision of the cosmic form of Lord Krishna, and why he prayed to Krishna to withdraw it. I remembered the scriptures said liberated souls dwelt in the same exalted state of consciousness. I now got a little glimpse from this experience of how much desirelessness is necessary for a person to remain continuously in that state. Hardly had a few days passed when I was overwhelmed by this continuous vision and spiritual mood, and found it difficult to function. Sometimes I thought, shall I lose my mind? At last I prayed to the Master fearfully, O Lord, I am not able to contain this spiritual fervor. Please release me from this state. Woe to human weakness and stupidity. Now I think, why did I pray that way? Why didn't I have faith in him and wait patiently to see what the ultimate result would be? I might have become mad, or my body might have dropped away. Soon after that prayer, my vision and spiritual mood abruptly came to an end. I was fully convinced that my experience came to an end by the same person from whom I had received it. But perhaps because the complete cessation of that vision didn't arise in my mind as I prayed, he kindly kept a little of that experience in me. I could see that divine, effulgent, gracious form of the Master several times a day and was overwhelmed with joy and blessedness. So this is the story of the Kalpataru day and Sri Ramakrishna's self-manifestation. And so now we will have Arati. In just a moment, we have Rupa Ghosh here, who has kindly agreed to sing during the service. You've heard several of her songs. And so as I move over and get things ready for the Arati, I'll ask her to sing another song to Sri Ramakrishna. And then after the Arati is over, one last song on Sri Ramakrishna. And so I will conclude my part here by wishing you all a happy new year, and more important, a blessed new year. We eventually find that blessedness is far, far superior to happiness, because blessedness refers to a state of inner joy which is not subject to the outer changes of life. And so it's that which we seek. So not just a happy new year, but a blessed new year to everyone. And may the blessings of Sri Ramakrishna and the Holy Mother, whose worship we observed today, and Swami Vivekananda, whose worship is coming shortly, may they all bless us all and lead us, guide us on the path to liberation. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Oh, please close the doors, both of them. Not that one, these two.
যে তৃষা জাগিলে তোমারে হারাবো, সে তৃষায় আমার জাগায়ো না। যে তৃষা জাগিলে তোমারে হারাবো, সে তৃষায় আমার জাগায়ো না। যে ভালোবাসায় তোমারে ভুলিব, যে ভালোবাসায় তোমারে ভুলিব, সে ভালোবাসায় ভুলায়ো না। যে তৃষা জাগিলে তোমারে হারাবো, সে তৃষায় আমার জাগায়ো না। যে জ্ঞানের দীপ তোমারে লুকায়, সে জ্ঞানের দীপ জ্বালায়ো না। যে জ্ঞানের দীপ তোমারে লুকায়, সে জ্ঞানের দীপ জ্বালায়ো না। যে যাতনা পেলে লোভিব তোমারে, সে যাতনা মোর হরিও না। যে দৃশায় আমার তোমা ছাড়া করে, সে দৃশায় আমার জাগায়ো না। যে সুখ লোভিলে তোমারে ভুলিব, যে সুখ লোভিলে তোমারে ভুলিব, সে সুখ সাগরে ভাসায় না। যে তৃষা জাগিলে তোমারে হারাব, সে তৃষায় আমার জাগায় না। যে কথার মাঝে তব কথা নাই, সে কথা আমারে শোনায় না। যে কথার মাঝে তব কথা নাই, সে কথা আমারে শোনায় না। যে আঁখি ঝরিলে তোমারে লোভিব, সে আঁখি ধারা বোঝায় না। যে তৃষা জাগিলে তোমারে হারাব, সে তৃষায় আমার জাগায় না। যে ভালোবাসায় তোমারে ভুলিব, যে ভালোবাসায় তোমারে ভুলিব, সে ভালোবাসায় ভুলায় না। যে তৃষা জাগিলে তোমারে হারাব, সে তৃষায় আমার জাগায় না। যে জ্ঞানী তোমারে লুকায়, সে জ্ঞানী দীপ জানায় না। যে যাতনা পেলে লোভিব তোমারে, সে যাতনা মোর হরিও না। যে দৃশায় আমায় তোমা ছাড়া করে, সে দৃশায় আমার জাগায় না। যে সুখ লোভিলে তোমারে ভুলিব, যে সুখ লোভিলে তোমারে ভুলিব, সে সুখ সাগরে ভাসায় না। যে তৃষা জাগিলে তোমারে হারাব, সে তৃষায় আমার জাগায় না। যে কথার মাঝে তব কথা নাই, সে কথা আমারে শোনায় না। যে কথার মাঝে তব কথা নাই, সে কথা আমারে শোনায় না। যে সে তৃষায় আমার জাগায় না। যে ভালোবাসায় তোমারে ভুলিব, যে ভালোবাসায় তোমারে ভুলিব, সে ভালোবাসায় ভুলায় না। যে তৃষা জাগিলে তোমারে হারাবো, সে তৃষায় আমার জাগায় না। যে জ্ঞানের দিক তোমারে লুকায়, সে জ্ঞানের দীপ জানায় না। যে যাতনা পেলে তোমারে লোভিব, সে যাতনা মোর হরিও না। যে দৃশ্যায় আমায় তোমা ছাড়া করে, সে দৃশ্যায় আমার জাগায় না। যে সুখ লোভিলে তোমারে ভুলিব, যে সুখ লোভিলে তোমারে লোভিব, সে সুখ সাগরে ভাসায় না। যে তৃষা জাগিলে তোমারে হারাবো, সে তৃষায় আমার জাগায়